as Metropolitan Magistrate in the Hazari Court. But for now, I am holding the post of the Secretary of the Central District Legal Services. Central District Legal Services Authority, it works under the aegis of the Delhi State Legal Services Authority. And Delhi State Legal Services Authority, आपको थोड़ा सा अगर brief दें कि National Legal Services Authority, Delhi State Legal Services Authority and District Legal Services Authorities, they are all legal services authorities which are formed under the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987. And the duties of all these legal services authorities, right from the national level from which they are functioning till the district level, their duty is basically to provide free legal aid to the marginalized and vulnerable sections of our society. Marginalized sections of our society, you would understand they are poor people. Vulnerable sections of the society, you will understand they are children, they are women, they are senior citizens, they are disabled people who are unable to sometimes fend for themselves because sometimes their statutory rights या उनके जो fundamental rights हैं वो violate होते हैं, जिसकी वजह से उनके साथ उनके जब राइट्स की वायलेशन है तो कई बार ह्यूमन राइट्स की वायलेशन भी होती है. एंड समटाइम्स पीपल आर बिकॉज ऑफ देयर certain disabilities, they are unable to get justice, they are unable to get proper legal solution to their problems. So for that, to help these people, to give succor to these people, these legal services authorities are formed. Another reason why these legal services authorities have been formed is because not everybody is able to afford the expensive fees of a lawyer. So legal services authorities जो हैं वो ensure करती हैं कि free and competent legal services provide की जाएं ऐसे लोगों को जिन्हें अपना कोर्ट से प्रॉब्लम का सॉल्यूशन लेने के लिए या जस्टिस लेने के लिए लीगल रिकॉर्स के लिए जो एक्सपेंसिव लॉयर्स अफोर्ड नहीं कर सकते हैं. तो जो लीगल सर्विसेज अथॉरिटीज का प्राइमरी रोल ये है. But besides this, the other role of legal services authorities is also to spread awareness amongst people on issues or on matters which concern the society and the nation as a whole. अब हम लोग time and again webinars hold करते रहते हैं. We hold webinars or sessions or workshops with schools, with colleges, with NGOs, so that at the grassroots level itself, from the very inception itself, people are made aware of their rights, their duties, and the solutions to their problems which law provides to them. So, keeping that objective in mind, we have organized today's webinar. Today's webinar will focus on the importance of fundamental rights and fundamental duties. The emphasis is mainly on fundamental duties. पता होगा that India got independent in the year 1947. All of us are aware of that. And thereafter, our Indian Constitution, the framers of our Indian Constitution, they started working on the Indian Constitution. They got inputs from different countries. The fundamental rights were taken from one country, fundamental duties were taken from fundamental directive principles were taken from other countries. So that's how the fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy and various other things, they were all taken together from inputs of different constitutions were taken, and our constitution, which is basically the lengthiest constitution of the world, was formed. All of us know कि हम लोग Indian citizens हैं. Being Indian citizens, we have your grandparents must have come from, some of your grandparents may have come from Pakistan, or they might be living in India. तो हम लोग यहाँ पे क्योंकि हमारा birth India में हुआ है, by virtue of our birth in India, we have become Indian citizens. And as Indian citizens, we have several responsibilities, we have several duties, we also have several rights which have been guaranteed to us by our Indian Constitution, which was adopted on 26th of January 1950 by the entire nation. जो हमारा इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, इट इज द सुप्रीम लॉ ऑफ द लैंड, इट इज द फंडामेंटल डॉक्यूमेंट। ये एक अम्ब्रेला लेजिस्लेशन है, अम्ब्रेला लॉ है, जिसके अंतर्गत सारे के सारे हमारे स्टैट्यूट्स और जितने भी हमारे लॉज हैं वो बनाए जाते हैं। कोई भी लॉ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अगेंस्ट जाके नहीं बनता है, ये बहुत ही बेसिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग है जो हम सबको रखने की बहुत जरूरत है। और जितने भी हमारे फंडामेंटल राइट्स हमें गारंटी किए गए हैं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की तरफ से, उन्हीं फंडामेंटल राइट्स को एनफोर्स करने की ड्यूटी हमारी कोर्ट्स की होती है। तो आज कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के दो इम्पोर्टेंट पोर्शंस के ऊपर बात करने के लिए, जो कि फंडामेंटल राइट्स और फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज है, इसके ऊपर बात करने के लिए हमारे पास रिसोर्स पर्सन है डॉक्टर क्षितिज कुमार सिंह। डॉक्टर क्षितिज कुमार सिंह प्रोफेसर हैं कैंपस लॉ सेंटर में। ही इज ऑल्सो the convener of the Legal Aid Society at Campus Law Center. I was going through the profile of Dr. Kshitij on the internet, and I found that he has a very strong hold on academics and has extensively researched in the field of intellectual property rights. जैसा कि आपसे सर बात भी हुई थी मेरी पहले. So he has extensively researched on intellectual property rights and especially patents and biotechnology and its developments in India. So now, without much ado, I would hand over the baton to Professor Kshitij and would request him to begin with the session. Over to you, Dr. Kshitij.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me on such a relevant topic, which becomes more relevant in this phase in which we are living. So, because we have to focus more upon fundamental duties within a given time, it would not be possible to throw light upon all the fundamental rights, but I will start with the scheme of our constitution. So if we go by that, you will find that there is an international bill of rights, which may include fundamental rights, directive principles, and fundamental duties. So as ma'am has rightly pointed out, that one of the main features of constitution is how rights are being defined and how they are being enforced. So here, one must clearly understand that the fundamental rights have some corollary, or you can say some analogy, with civil and political rights, which is guaranteed under International Bill of Human Rights, like International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So these rights are negative in nature, in the sense that in this very sphere, we expect that the state have least interference. It means that, for example, right to life or personal liberty. So here, it is always being guaranteed that a person is free to do something. He is free to, exercise his rights without having state interference. Though there are certain reasonable restrictions which are imposed in few of the rights, in case of few of the rights like freedom of speech and expression. But those limits are reasonable limits, and they are in consonance with the proper effectuation or enforcement of these rights. So fundamental rights are of two types. One is which is available to all the persons, irrespective of whether they are citizen or not. And there are few which are confined to citizens. So for example, if you talk about Article 19, that is available to citizens only. So, without getting in that much into fundamental rights, because you all are aware of that, I must put emphasis on the nature of the rights as well as duties which are combined with this. So if you talk about fundamental rights, the nature is negative, as I said, and it is always being expected that the state must interfere from that very ambit in which people, citizens or people are exercising their rights. On the other hand, in directive principles, it is the duty of a state. It is the duty of a state to take into account all the principles which has been prescribed in the governance of the country. So there you will see there is a clear duty which is being imposed on the state to follow that very principle. But the question is whether a state is empowered with the resources, with all the resources, to fulfill all the rights which are prescribed under the head of directive principle. So there is some sort of, you can say, limit to the resources to the empowerment. And there, because of these deficiencies, it has been made fundamental in the governance of the country, but it has not made enforceable in the court of law. So this is the scheme under which the rights are enforced. The other thing, that is fundamental duties, that is a little, you can say, relatively new addition if you compare it with the fundamental rights or directive principle. So it has been added in 1976 only. So what was the background, why that has been added? There may be various, theories regarding that. And one of the theories is because at that very moment there was a situation of emergency, which you all will be knowing, I hope. So in 1975, there was a committee which is being considered or named as Singh Committee, which was made to prescribe certain fundamental duties to set or put the order in the society. So that committee came up with certain, you can say, duties, a format of certain duties, which has been approved by the parliament, and then that has been added through 42nd Amendment 1976 in the form of fundamental duties of citizens of it. So here, I will be focusing on these duties and correlating it with other aspects. So first of all, my scheme of talk would be like this. Like I will be inquiring into what was the background, what was the relevance, how duties are related with the rights, and how they are being framed in our constitution. And I will explain each duty at length so that you can imbibe the whole soul essence of that duty. So let's begin with the background. So background, as I said, that it was an emergent situation where there were certain problems of law and order and many other problems. So to reassure that very, intactness of the people with the nation, there were certain, duties which were prescribed. And whenever we talk about duties, many things come to our mind, that whether these duties are exclusive duties, why these duties have not been incorporated when this constitution was introduced, and many other things. So you must understand that whenever there is a right, there is a duty, because duty is correlative to right. So if a person is not obeying his duty, there is no meaning of any enforcement. So the enforcement of duty itself recognizes or guaranteed the enforcement of right. So because of that, it was presumed that whatever rights are being prescribed, they are well aligned with the duties. So there is no need of, putting it, or you can say making it a distinct kind of, you can say, part in the constitution. But because of certain exigencies or urgencies, it was realized that the sense of realization of duty is not that much in the society. So there must be something, some fundamental duties. So that is why there are 11 fundamental duties. They are not that much exhaustive. So there are so many kinds of duties. First of all, you have to understand that. So if you are, obliged by any official position, you are bound by a legal duty. And if there is a legal right which is being enforced against you, you are always bound by that very duty. And if you are not, performing that very duty, then a course of action could be taken against you through the law. So that is about the legal duty. Apart from legal duty, there are moral duties. And there, though the law does not prescribe any, as such, any punishment regarding those non-observance of duties, but it is always being, its role is totally different. It tried to bring that kind of awareness among the people that they come forward and they perform that very duty. So, for example, I will just quote one, quote from Immanuel Kant, and then I will proceed with our framework. So, in theories of Immanuel Kant, there is one theory which is categorical imperative theory of duty. And this categorical imperative theory of duty suggests that if someone is begging on the road, or someone is thirsty, and you are just passing by by that very road, so you are not legally bound in that sense that any punishment could be made against you, but you are morally bound. And in that very sense, you have to make sure that that very person must be fed or must be supplied with water. So that very imperative comes from within, from the inner consciousness. And because of that, it suggests that what is right and what is wrong. And in that way, even if there is no punishment as such, no legal obligation as such, you come forward and provide that thing to that very person who is needy. So because of that, that very duty is being followed without having a legal sanction behind it. So likewise, under the Fundamental Duties chapter, which is Article 51A, Clause A to K. So there are total 11 duties which are prescribed under this very part, and that is Part 4A. Under Part 4A, Article 15A, Clause A to K define various fundamental duties, and these duties again are not enforceable in the court of law. Then the question begins, then what is the importance of adding this very chapter? So this importance lies in the fact that there are something which could not be enforced practically, but which could be guided through certain principles, by making people aware, by making people more and more focused upon what obligations they have for the state, for the nation. So because of that, these fundamental duties have been added in the chapter of our constitution. And when I say constitution, it means this is a constitutional obligation which is being there in the form of constitutional framework. So these broadly defined fundamental duties must always be obeyed by taking it as a, you can say, a main obligation of each individual of this very country. So let us start with this very framework, that is fundamental duties under Constitution of India. So first duty which is being prescribed under the Constitution is to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. So there are 3-4 components which we have to focus upon. The first one is we have to abide by the Constitution, first of all. Nothing could be done which go against the Constitution or constitutional norms. Second one thing is to respect its ideals. So where are these ideals? These ideals could be found in the preamble of the Constitution, which prescribes that there is a democracy, it guarantees equality, liberty, or you can say other freedoms. So that must be there. Likewise, whatever ordeals have been contained in the preamble of the Constitution must be abided by everyone. So to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals. And the second thing which is being mentioned under this very duty is the institutions. So here we have to be very clear that if anything, any wrong happens or anything happens, you must take recourse of the well-recognized constitutional organs, or you can say constitutional institution. For example, if there is any violation, you must proceed through the process of law, approach the courts, judges, lawyers, and likewise. And always have a sense of belongingness to these very institutions by paying utmost respect to the procedures which are being followed by them. Next thing is to pay utmost respect to national flag. Now the manner of respect may be different, but any gesture must have that very indicia of respect. So as you know, because as I have already said, that these are not enforceable in the court of law, even then, to effectuate these very fundamental duties, there are various legislations or laws which are being there. So from time to time, the legislature pass certain laws which ensure these duties. So for example, in this very case, emblem and names Prevention of Improper Use Act 1950 is there. Then again, Prevention of Insult to National Honors Act 1971 is there. There is a flag code also in India where certain rules are prescribed, certain laws are prescribed, which could be applied against anyone who is violating these duties. Now coming to the second duty that is termed as to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. So as you see here, you cannot compel anyone to cherish and follow the noble ideals. So there is impracticality while making it enforceable through law in this very case. So it could only be done by a sense of realization. So to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. So what were those noble ideals have not been prescribed, but they can be gathered by the freedom struggle. So these ideals may be to have intactness, affection towards nation, to have those ideals which ensure progress of the nation, and likewise. So the ultimate aim behind this very duty is to build a just society, a united nation, freedom, equality, non-violence, brotherhood, and many other things, which can promote India as a progressive nation. So those are the noble ideals which were a key factor in freedom struggle, and that is why we have to remain intact with them. So nowadays you might be seeing that many separatist tendencies are going on. So they are very much against those ideals which were fundamental in the concept of duty, which is being prescribed here as 51A. So, as I said that in other cases, legislations have been made. In this very case also, you will find few relevant legislation. One of them is the Unlawful Activities or Prevention Act of 1967. Likewise, the Representation of Peoples Act of 1951. Third duty which is being there is to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. So where the sovereignty lies, if you read the constitution, you read the preamble, you will find we the people of India who have solemnly resolved to constitute our nation, India, in this way, in a democratic manner. So it means to say that though the sovereignty which lies with the people, but those people have given a document to govern themselves. And what was the document which people have given to themselves is the constitution. So it must always be taken into account that the sovereignty which lies with the people and guaranteed under the document of constitution must be taken in a very, very high esteem, and that must always be protected. So what could be the potential misuse of this very, duty, that is sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India? Where are the chances where we could violate these very duties? You may find that when you are exercising your right of freedom to speech and expression, under that very right, you have to be very cautious that you must not make an expression which may weaken the sovereignty or unity or integrity of India. And for that very reason, there are few stringent laws which are being imposed also, like Chapter 6 of IPC contains certain offenses which are against the state. Then there is a provision of sedition, which is there under Section 124A of the IPC. There are other relevant provisions like 153A, 153B, and 505 Clause 2 of IPC. And apart from that, as I said, that fundamental rights also are subjected to certain reasonableness. And that reasonableness is reflected in various limitations which are imposed on it. So one of the restrictions, if you go through Article 19(1)(a), which guarantees freedom of speech and expression, you will find that one of the restrictions is that it must not violate the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. So as you see here, which is being guaranteed here under the constitutional duty, it has also been found in the form of restriction in other provisions, that is Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. Now coming to fourth duty, the fourth duty which is being prescribed is to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. So here, we all have this very duty to defend against external enemies, and it is addressed to the citizens to realize this very duty and say, to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. It includes many things. For example, if you are coming across anything which may be a threat to the nation, to the national security of this very country, you must communicate that very information to the relevant people so that the action could be taken and the, you can say, defense of that very activity, defend against that very activity could be ensured. So citizens are bound to be conscious, always continuously cautious of any such elements which are entering in India and which may have some sort of, you can say, indicia of a kind of threat to our, you can say, nation or any security purposes. The fifth duty which is being there is to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities, to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. So if we fragmentize it, there are so many parts where we have to focus upon. So the first thing is to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India. This very content could also be found in the preamble where fraternity is being guaranteed. But we don't discuss that much, that very term, that very content, fraternity, as it should be. So here you may see that it is our fundamental duty to always promote harmony. Any case of conflict, if any case of conflict is there, we have to promote the spirit of common brotherhood among all the people of India, transcending whatever conflict may be there, may it be religious, may it be linguistic, may it be regional or sectional diversities. Any sort of conflict must be harmonized by each and every individual of this very country, because this is our fundamental duty. And we should try to harmonize it and promote common brotherhood against all these differences. So whether we have been able to achieve it, we have to realize, I don't think that even now there is a huge crisis of this very, promotion of harmony and common brotherhood in our country. We always see the riots, we always see the various conflicts, which are very, very, discouraging. And we as the citizen of India must ensure that because we are bound by the Constitution, it is our constitutional obligation to put this very, common brotherhood and harmony at the optimum. So if you review these very duties, you will find that we are not able to catch up as we should. The next thing which is being mentioned here is to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. Again, we are not that much successful because cases are rampant. You are saying that, and they are being happening like anything. So we have not been able to promote the common brotherhood. In that sense, we are still very intolerant to the beliefs, to the concerns, to the ideas of others. We are also not being able to curb the practices which are derogatory against the woman. So these are the challenges, and this very duty is very, very essential to realize, to be realized by every citizen, so that we can ensure that very, content. So there are legislative attempts which were made to deal with these kind of situations. One of the act you can, found in the Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955. There is a criminal law amendment also, which ensures the dignity of women, or derogatory practices. It curbs derogatory practices against women, like Section 354A, 354B, C, and D, where voyeurism is also being recognized as a kind of crime. But the question is that these laws are when an act is being committed, they are not preventive. They could only be exercised when an act of violation is being done. But when we go through the fundamental duties and we try to realize it, try to practice it, then we can prevent these kind of exigencies in the first hand. So as you see here, if you transcend these kind of, you can say, values, that any practice which is derogatory to the dignity of women must be refrained from exercise, then that would be more meaningful effectuation of these contents rather than just applying the law in case of violation. So that is why duty is more important than the right, which ensures that kind of right which is being violated. Next very duty is to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. So what is composite culture? What is heritage? So as we all know that our civilization has so many values in our culture, and those values cannot be segregated by just picking a religious kind of, you can say, merit, or you can say or criteria, or sectoral kind of criteria. That would not be like that. So composite culture means it is a kind of content which is very mixed one, and we have inherited that very content and continued that very content in our practice for a long time. So we must own it first of all, and then we must try to protect it. So composite culture means culture drawn from many strands, encapsulating the various sections, the various religions, various sects, and then imbibing in a particular, you can say, a composite framework, and then we can, try to preserve it. So composite culture means culture drawn from many strands. This also includes the monuments and pieces of arts, temples, gardens, statues, and paintings. So one should not be, violative, or one should not be, in practice, to put any harm to either of these, elements which are being prescribed. So nowadays, and many, incidences in the past also, you will find that there have been attempts to harm these kind of heritage sites, to break others' places of worships, set fire on religious texts. So we should not, engage in these kind of activities, which is
Dr. Kshitij, we can't hear you. We have lost you, I believe. Dr. Kshitij? Dr. Kshitij? Gaurav? हेलो गौरव।
यस मैम।
ये प्रोफेसर साहब के ही इंटरनेट में कुछ प्रॉब्लम है।
यस मैम।
ओके, एक बार उनको कॉल करिए जरा।
जी मैम, मैं बात करता हूँ।
सो डॉक्टर क्षितिज के हमारे रिसोर्स पर्सन के नेटवर्क में इशू है, बट I will just summarize on what he has said up till now. अभी तक उन्होंने ये emphasize किया कि जब इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हमारा फ्रेम हुआ था and it was adopted in the year 1950, उस समय फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज का चैप्टर इनकॉर्पोरेटेड नहीं था. The chapter of fundamental duties वो incorporate किया गया 1967 में. जैसे कि किसी डॉक्यूमेंट में अमेंडमेंट्स की जाती हैं, तो उसी तरीके से subsequently amendment हुई हमारे इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में, and this amendment took place in the year 1976, where when it took place in the year 1976, then the chapter of fundamental duties was added. Fundamental duties, as he emphasized, that there are 51 duties, and these 51 duties, there are 11 duties. Initially it was 10 duties only, but subsequently one more duty was added, and the last duty which was added, it talks about the duty of every citizen, of every parent, to ensure that every child who falls between the age of 6 to 14 years gets proper education. जो हमारा फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज में ये एजुकेशन वाला एस्पेक्ट है, इसका एक कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग राइट भी एग्जिस्ट करता है, जो राइट फंडामेंटल राइट है हर एक बच्चे का, which child falls between the age of 6 to 14 years, कि ऐसे बच्चे mandatorily education provide करवाना है. Now this is an important right. इसी एक्ट के subsequent में एक law भी बनाया गया था, and that law also says that it is the fundamental right of every child to be educated. Dr. Kshitij has now joined back, and I would request him to take it forward. I was just trying to make up for the deficiency which occurred. So please go ahead, sir. Your voice is not audible. You need to unmute yourself. You have been muted. Gaurav, he has been muted. Please unmute him. Gaurav, am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Please unmute Dr. Kshitij. You have muted him. We can't listen to him.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now you hear me?
Yes, now you are audible.
So can you tell me where I left? So I will begin from there.
You were just talking about the heritage sites and the disfiguration of the heritage sites which people generally take up.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just, finishing it. I mean, that very duty, which is to value and preserve the rich heritage and composite culture. So I have explained you what is composite culture, because we inherit a culture which is imbibing various kind of, philosophies of various sects, various religions. So we have to be very intact, and we should not, allow our activities which are, monopolistic, but governed by our own individual faith and beliefs. But we have to imbibe and encourage the other beliefs also, which are part of our composite culture. Now I'm coming to the next duty, which is very much relevant in today's world, and that is to protect our environment. So 15(1) AG, it clearly prescribes to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So here you see that we are still facing huge problem as regards to environmental pollution. Environmental pollution, we always blame that it is because of governmental, inaction or something like that. Though there are something which could be said like that, but it heavily relies on the individual activities of us as a citizen. So because of that, unless and until we try to follow and abide by those actions which are responsible actions, we could not make this very menace to go. So for that very sake, we have to ensure that we must take care of all our activities in consonance with the protection of natural environment, forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife. And apart from that, we must also ensure that we have the same compassion as we have as an individual usually exercise to other creatures also, which are there. So as I said, there are various legislations in this very realm which are also being there to protect environment. For example, the Environment Protection Act 1986, the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. But I must reiterate that these acts could only be applicable when there is an act or activity which is going on. So if we follow the fundamental duties, we don't need to apply these acts. So this is a kind of, you can say, preventive action, which could be maintained or ensured by just observing our duties. So next duty which is being there is to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. These words are not defined, but they could be, expressed or explained in a manner which make a sense. So I will try to, explain it. So to develop the scientific temper. So it means to say that we must have a kind of temper where we make ourselves open to test our ideas, to test our beliefs, to test anything and everything on a with a scientific approach. We must not take fallacy taken for granted. Whatever we have been just told, we must not just abide by that, unless and until we testify whether it is scientifically, or you can say it is based on reason, or it is just a saying. So that kind of temperament is termed as scientific temperament. And apart from scientific temperament, we must have humanism also, and empathy against each other. It means to say that we must value the other being as a human being, and that very value must transcend from one individual to another. So that very input of humanism must be there, otherwise we become robot only, and we are just exercising our whole activities in a mechanical way without having any empathy. So this very value is very much embedded in the very value of humanism, and it must be promoted. And the third thing which is being mentioned here is the spirit of inquiry and reform. It means that we must always be on evolving track. We must always examine our activities or theories or values, whether they are being intact with the social progress or not, whether we are carrying out something which is not reasonable. So this inquiry must always be on, so that we can make, you can say, justifiable reforms in our various laws, approaches, and many other things, so that we can progress as a society, which is termed as progressive society. So these very three terms are very important to imbibe, to ensure India as a progressive society. Next very duty is to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. So you all were witness of many activities which happened recently, where the first thing which is being targeted is always the public property, always the property which we all own as a citizen. So there we are not that much cautious what we are doing. We are not, destroying others' property. We are destroying our own. So to safeguard public property and to abjure violence is our fundamental duty. So whatever your reasons may be, you are in clear violation of your fundamental duty if you are engaged in these kind of activities. So as a citizen, you don't have any right to do that. So you must always imbibe this thing within yourselves, that it must be safeguarded, the public property, and violence of any sort must not be transcended. So there are few laws. Laws are always there. Laws are there. There is one definition as I must share with you. There is one journal, science journal, because I am very much engaged in science. So you all will be knowing, Nature, the famous journal Nature, which belongs to science. There is one liner which was described, what is the difference between law and ethics. So they described like this, like ethics sets the maximum pattern of human behavior. which every individual try to achieve, try to, obtain, but he never achieves it. He try to obtain the maximum standard. And the minimum standard is being set by law, where if you violate that very standard, you could be penalized.
Dr. Kshitij, you have again been muted. I'm sorry to interrupt. Gaurav, please unmute him.
I'm not sure why.
I don't know.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay. So this was the duty, that is to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. One act which is relevant to this very duty is the Prevention of Damage to Property, Public Property Act 1984. But as I said, that we have to focus more on duties rather than law, because duties have more wider, you can say, impact as compared to law. Next duty is to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. So when we talk about excellence, we must be a little bit, you can say, open-minded. And the next thing is we put our 100% by setting maximum standard or higher standard in our respective fields, so that we can match with the time, we can match with the global progress. So because of that, that very excellence brings us a good name. So that spirit must be taken into account, and we must always ensure that we strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity. So I'm coming to the last one, and that is added by 86th constitutional amendment, as ma'am has mentioned. That is right to education, which is being clubbed with this very duty also, where the duty is being conferred on the parents, so that they ensure that a certain level of students must be given compulsory education. So the duty goes like this, that every citizen must provide opportunities for education to his child or ward between the age of 6 to 14 years. And this is a duty, as I said, it is duty which is imposed on the parents or guardians to ensure education of their children. But what is going on the practical level? We all know that child labor is still existing. Many people are engaged there, and even few children are still employed in hazardous activities. We try to find them out. We try to catch them up and try to bring them in mainstream, but we are not closely associated with those children. So if we make this awareness among the parents that they must realize this very duty and they must ensure that primary education must be given at least to those children, then that would be a far more, bigger impact as compared to other activities. So child labor still exists. There are a few laws here also, like child labor acts are there, laws are there, and then section 10 of Right to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, which also mentions regarding that. So we try to, comply with these duties, but still we are not being able since 1976 till now to make them properly, you can say, realized by every citizen. And where the, you can say, failures, what were the strings of failure, we have to identify, and we are identifying, like Legal Aid Society or DLSA and many other agencies likewise. They always try to focus upon that why we are not being able to get these things realized in an individual. And I must put a little more emphasis on fundamental duties, because if people are properly educated, properly made aware, then they try to start, abiding these kind of fundamental duties. So I think that the main problem is the unawareness or ignorance of these duties, and to properly disseminate. That is a challenging job. How can you make these duties properly understood by those people who are there? So these kind of challenges are always there, and because ma'am has organized this very program for students of, I hope that the standard 12th or something like that. So you are young brains. So if you try to disseminate these kind of duties among themselves, you start from your, friends, and then you can transcend it to other people too. Then that would be a huge, you can say, game change in this very scenario. So having said that, I will just, conclude my lecture with this, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kshitij. We are really privileged to have you with us today and to have given such a beautiful and elaborate presentation on the fundamental duties. I would quickly sum up on what the resource person, our learned resource person, has emphasized on. He has pointed out that fundamental duties ये हमारे Indian Constitution में beginning से नहीं incorporated था. So this was incorporated in the year 1976 by the 42nd Amendment. Secondly, he has very aptly pointed out that fundamental duties, which is incorporated by way of Article 51A of the Constitution, they are not legally enforceable. Which means कि अगर आप अपनी fundamental duties को नहीं निभाते हैं, if you do not perform your duties, if you somehow ignore them, then no legal action can be initiated against you, which is not the case अगर किसी के fundamental rights को violate किया जाता है. So he has quite nicely stated that if somebody on the road, if you find somebody who is thirsty or who is hungry, and if you simply pass by that person without helping him, no action will be initiated, but you are still morally bound to see that since he is a fellow citizen, it is your duty to help him out in those difficult times. Then he has very beautifully explained about the backdrop in which the fundamental duties came to be incorporated in our constitution. Framework of fundamental duties, जैसा कि explain किया. Another very important thing has been pointed out that no right exists without corresponding duties. It is very important. When we are performing our duties, only then we can claim enforcement of our rights also. So हमें अपनी ड्यूटीज को जो हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में है और बहुत ही बेसिक हैं बट दे आर स्टिल वेरी प्रोफाउंड इन नेचर, इनको हमें अगर परफॉर्म करेंगे so we will also be able to very easily enforce our rights against the other fellow citizens. Then he has very nicely pointed out that we should show reverence towards our state developed institutions. And if you have any issues with regard to violation of your rights, then you should approach those institutions for the purpose of redressal of your grievances instead of taking recourse to violent measures. All of us know that how riots erupted in Delhi in the last year and in the beginning of this year, and how public property has been to a large extent has been disfigured, it has been destroyed, so many people have been killed. So the sense of common brotherhood, it really shows that the sense of common brotherhood is seriously lacking amongst our people. No doubt India is a diverse nation, we are a multilingual, multi-religious society, but at the same time, if we are able to correctly understand the fundamentals which lie beneath the Indian Constitution, which is of common brotherhood, of respecting, of reverence to, mutual respect towards each other, then all these aspects of religion and caste and the other factors, they will really not have any bearing on our mind. If we learn to respect human beings as human beings, then we will be able to grow towards a peaceful society and a peaceful nation. Then he has very aptly pointed out that we need to shun all practices which harm human dignity, which disfigure the heritage sites of our nation, our monuments. Then he has also pointed out that environment pollution, it is a global problem these days. We all need to work towards the working towards or espousing for global environment. We should work towards purification of the environment, and we should shun all practices which contribute to the environmental pollution. then we should also show compassion towards our towards the living creatures. A very sad example, sorrowful example of the female elephant, which which lost her life due to some mischief caused by a child, or God knows who that person was. Because of the ignorance of that person, the elephant, who was a pregnant elephant, she died, she lost her life. So we should show compassion for all the living creatures also, apart from compassion for our fellow citizens. And all types of violence, as he has rightly pointed out, should be abjured, it should be shunned. So all in all, I believe that through this session, we have been able to communicate to all the participants the importance of our fundamental duties. We only wanted, our intention was to have an overview of the fundamental duties through this webinar, and I'm sure everybody has been benefited from it. All this, what you have heard from this webinar, it is important that this information doesn't just end here. It is important that whenever you move out in the society, you are able to demonstrate that type of behavior in the society, so that it shows that you have a sense of belongingness for the nation, for the society as a whole, for the people, for your fellow beings. So thank you very much, Dr. Kshitij. I'm really happy that you have consented for for conducting this webinar. Really happy. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you very much. And I thank all the participants who have joined us today. With this, we will be now coming to the end of this program. I thank you once again.